Martinez, and we have Andy Martinez. Did I miss anybody else? Oh, Tony Lopez. Thank you for joining us here this morning. And once again, this is my annual community conference. This is the last of the series of 5 meetings. I represent 5 cities, and this is the last one that we'll be doing for this year. So quickly, want to go over a couple things on the state budget, very brief. It's a preliminary working budget as the governor made a proposal. We will be having a budget revised in May. We'll see how the numbers look. But with that, if the budget was passed today, we have the largest reserves in history of the state capital with $18 billion of reserve. And it's really important that we have those healthy reserves because we don't know what can happen in a few years from now as things turn for the worse. And we have that cushion to help continue our services, because without that cushion, guess what happens? We start cutting funding, right? If it's the cities, organizations, and really public services that the people need here in the state of California. Before I go any further, so I want to introduce my staff before I forget. We have my chief of staff, Ronnie, back here to the back. And then we have Josue, Josue, out to the front checking folks in. Yeah, throughout the meeting, feel free to talk to them about anything, and we can follow with you after the meeting as well. So once again, with the state budget, we have an $18 billion reserve, which is very healthy and good to have that reserve once again for an economic downturn. We have something. And with that as well, since I chair the retirement committee of the state of California, PERS, I'm very pleased and happy to say that this governor has allocated $8 billion in funding to CalSTRS and CalSPERS program. And that's something huge that I never thought we'd have, especially talk about our finances when it comes to pensions in the state of California, that he is adding some additional funding for that as well. Obviously, the next thing he's looking at that's really important to me, and I think a lot of our communities, is homelessness. He has allocated $500 million to the homeless issue in the state of California. With that, $10 million specifically will be going to the county of San Bernardino, and that money trickled down to cities and counties, grants that they have to apply for it and get them that funding. And with that, I know we have a couple council members here. Maybe if that's something that they want to address, we can partner up together and hopefully get you some of that money as well. Also, this governor is looking to double down on working tax credits for our working families here in the state of California. It's something that's huge, is helping a lot of folks in need. With that, I want to say that also in this budget, we have an issue with our 911 system as we talk about the fires and floods that we had in Northern California. And California being prone to a lot of disasters, whether it's the earthquakes and we have experienced the floods and the fires. Our 911 system is very old and outdated, as we're looking to upgrade our system to what they call next generation 911, where they'll be probably sending videos from our first responders, police and fire, to our dispatch centers to back and forth, so we can know what type of issues they're having. And that's something that's going to be really helpful for our first responders. And being with that, as you may have known, I'm really have a lot of close relationships and background in EMS, being that I worked for the ambulance industry for over 30 years, and the relationships I dealt with regarding our first responders, police officers, firefighters, and our local EMS folks, that I want to make sure that they have the necessary tools and equipment to provide service to each and every one of us, whether we live here in this district or somewhere in Northern California, because it's very important, once again, being that California is a prone state for a lot of natural disasters. Yep. With that, I just want to talk briefly on a couple bills I'm working on. One of them in particular that's kind of close to home is AB 675. It's prison security assessments. I don't know if folks are familiar with the escape at Chino Prison, pretty much around this time last year. I don't know if anybody remembers that. As I looked into it on how that escape occurred, actually it was because of the infrastructure at Chino Prison. It's one of the oldest prisons in the state, and with that they don't have not a lot of oversight over infrastructure. Could anybody guess on what was one of the main reasons why somebody escaped there? Just wanted to throw it out to you, because it was something that very important that was overlooked or not addressed. Just throw it out, just anybody want to take a quick guess.
Hole in the gate.
Had to do with the gate in a sense, but it was a fence. It was a broken fence sensor that hadn't been fixed in over 10 years. On top of that, the lighting in that perimeter, which pretty much was the south portion of that prison, was not working as well. So those are two basic things you think about: a fence, sensor, and lighting. How basic are those that they couldn't fix? and they've been not working for over 10 years. So with that, I have this bill going forward to looking at our prison system in the state of California, and every 2 to 3 years, they really evaluate the securityness of the prison. And hopefully with that, I'll get that to the governor to make sure that we got our prisons safely secured, because who knows what can happen. We can look back, and this is the history here with what happened years ago in Chino with the murders we had there because of an escapee. So another one I want to talk to you that I'm working on is AB 329, violence in the hospital. This bill will close an alarming loophole by current law by equalizing penalties for assaults committed against healthcare providers, regardless of whether the assaults occur inside or outside of the hospital. I think we're living in a day and age now where a lot of our hospital staff, in particular the emergency room, as people are being transported there, and the outcomes may not be favorable to them, or maybe they don't like the way they're being treated. And guess who's being assaulted? Our healthcare workers, whether it's the doctor, the nurses, the technicians that are providing care for those that are sick and injured. And once again, I'm looking at that if an assault were to occur to hospital staff, they're held accountable for their actions, because that's the last place we would want folks to be having a crime committed, so to speak, when you're applying violence to our healthcare workers.
Could you mention the name of the hospital?
It's occurring in every hospital in the state of California. And I can talk to you a little bit more about that in detail a little further, because once again, in my background in EMS, prior to coming to the Assembly, working in the ambulance industry, I'm taking those patients to every hospital, right? So I've experienced firsthand and trying to help secure violence, whether it's the patient or family members that are attacking our doctors and nurses and technicians that work in the hospital setting as well. So with that, we'll move on to another bill. I have AB 26. It's equipping our first responders with safety. Being once again talking about my background in the ambulance industry, AB 26 is a bill to protect our private sector EMS workers for having protective gear. We're living in a day and age now where we're having school shootings and we're having workplace violence. We're having a lot of issues with our first responders arriving on scene, and guess what? In the private sector, they have no protective gear to take care of them. You know, obviously the police officers have gear, the firefighters have gear, but once again, the private sector EMS workers in the ambulance that are transporting those patients have no protective gear. So I just want to make sure that they have the equipment to protect and take care of themselves, because once again, they're taking care of us. So should we take care of them as well to make sure they provide the safety to take care of those in need? The next one I want to talk about is AB 27. It's a mental health, integrity, and safety act. Once again, it's to our private sector EMS workers. You got to think about it, folks. When people call 911, it's probably the worst time people are experiencing, whether of death in the family, pain, suffering, a tragic incident that they need help. Well, just think time and time again, day in and day out, what that goes to a first responder. Seeing that type of calls, right, running through their mind. And some of them may not be able to handle that stress. So I want to make sure the first responders have good mental health services, and maybe if there's a very severe incident, that we get everybody off the rig for maybe an hour to talk to a licensed professional to talk about what they experienced, and make sure they're okay before they go back out on the road. And with this goes to protect them as well. And both of those bills come out of Proposition 11. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Proposition 11 in the November ballot last year, where they talked about every ambulance will be the first ambulance to respond to an emergency. There are proper training for active shooters. I don't know if anybody remembers that. It was highly publicized out there for it to pass, and obviously it did pass. But with that, there was a lot of issues in that bill. And these two bills have come to address our private sector EMS workers in that workforce. So one thing also I want to talk about, I mean, those are just a couple of the bills I'm working on. I know there's more stuff on there. I just want to highlight a couple of things with you on that. One thing I want to talk about is our SB1 funding, also referred to as the gas tax that was passed last year by the legislature. And just give you a quick update on what we're doing and making sure that funding comes not only to the counties, but to the cities, to ultimately you guys see a change in your city streets, right? I know we have a lot of issues on Monte Vista Avenue Street, rehabilitation design only. Also on Hope Boulevard here in the area, street improvement projects. Also, there's a project on North Montclair traffic signal interconnect improvement project and designs Monte Vista Street rehabilitation, so there's a lot of things working at the local level. Also, we're looking to address a lot of issues on the I-10 corridor. But with that said, obviously the highways are the state's responsibility for infrastructure, the on and off ramps as well. I would like to reach out to you to let you know if there's any certain areas of the 10 freeway, or any freeways in general, right, within the district or outside the district. I know on my website there's a link to advise Caltrans in that, or if not, worst case, call my office so that we're aware of it and we can get Caltrans to fix those issues, because if we don't have this connection working together, sometimes things are going to get overlooked and may take months to get fixed, right? But I want to see if we can get your guys' help to let me know as well on some of these issues, because money is going to address those issues. And I want to make sure you guys see that we're doing that, right? But without us working together, making sure the job is being done properly by them as well. I think with that, I know I talked to Councilmember Bill Rue. Anything specifically, maybe in the city of Montclair, that they may want to look at regarding, or any of the council members, if you want to come up and talk about some of the infrastructure projects, as we're talking about the SB1, the gas tax infrastructure and money coming to the city to address any issues. So I could open it up to one of the members of the council.
I'd like specifically talk about SB1, and I know my colleagues may have some issues, but one of the things we've been working very aggressively on in this city, in coordination with our friends just to the west of us, maybe I should, because I don't know, just to the west of us, and it is to make certain that the gold line gets through to the city of Montclair. The Assembly member has been involved with this from his days on the Pomona Council and has been extremely supportive in the Assembly. It was mid-January when a group of us got together from the various cities, Laverne, Claremont, San Dimas, Pomona, and Montclair. And I'm on the Gold Line Authority, so we went to the MTA meeting in Los Angeles. It was a very, very long meeting. But we expressed strong advocacy for the Gold Line getting through to each of the cities. Essentially, we started with San Dimas, then Laverne, Claremont, Pomona, and Montclair. And the MTA was surprised to see such unanimous support that each city said it's a building block, and if it doesn't get to one, the rest of it isn't going to work. The outcome of that, in working with the state as well, is that we were able to get the funding through to the city of Pomona. The next leg is going to be Pomona to Claremont, Claremont to Montclair. And we need to keep pushing, but we also need to thank our state partners, such as Assemblymember Rodriguez, for doing the work that they're doing. This is critical, not just to Montclair or Claremont or Pomona, but to the region, because increasingly we're going to have to move a lot of people through our area. It's also an issue, I look at it as social justice, because think of people who may be seniors and can no longer drive a car. How do they get around if they want to go to Pasadena to go see a play, or go to the Claremont colleges if you're a lecturer? You can get on the Gold Line and you can do that. I use it quite a bit. In fact, next week on the 5th, I have tickets to the Dorothy Chandler. It's an evening, and I'm going to be taking with friends. We're going to be taking Gold Line there. It's easier. It's an issue for students. How many students today can afford a car? Very few, because cars are becoming very, very expensive. And the insurance, they can now for $1.75 get to colleges, because the colleges along the line, Claremont colleges, the University of Laverne, APU, Citrus College, Pasadena City College, and then on out into LA. This is an issue that's critical. I mean, people say, oh, well, maybe you're selfish if you're just thinking about Montclair. I'm not thinking about just Montclair. I'm thinking about the entire region and how we get these people. So it's critical that we continue to put the pressure on people to do something and help get it through. But it's also critical that we thank people such as Assemblymember Rodriguez for his longtime support. As I said, it goes back to his days on the Pomona Council. So,
another question. If it goes through, because I want to go through, what are you guys expecting completion? And is Amtrak going to be there as well?
So they're asking about the completion of the Gold Line.
If we do this, we're looking at probably 2026, somewhere in that time frame. Because part of the problem has been there have been cost estimates have gone up, not just because of the cost of material, a lot of it has to do with labor costs. We cannot find anymore the qualified people to do a lot of the work because people just aren't going into those fields anymore. They have, and that's part of it. So we're looking at trying to, the authority is saying this is one of the reasons, but we're looking at maybe 2026. That's what they're saying right now because we've got to get it through to Pomona. The other thing that is happening, whether Amtrak goes through or not, we don't know. They've talked to Amtrak about that, but Amtrak is funded through the federal government, and the federal side, at least with the Federal Railroad Administration, they're saying they want to cut funding and routes for Amtrak. They want to keep the Eastern Corridor route, and there's some routes in Chicago and all that, but they really want to cut back. So I can't speak to that because I'm not an expert on Amtrak, but I know the Federal Railroad Administration said they want to cut back.
I was just going to add also that for educational purposes, the November election, we've had a measure on the ballot to bring another college to Ontario, our neighbor. And Chaffey College will now be introducing a new Chaffey College campus in Ontario. So the goal line is very instrumental in allowing students to attend college.
And you said you're gonna build another college?
Yes, in Ontario.
Whereabouts in Montclair, you know?
So they're going to build another college here in the area. It's going to be near Chaffey College in Ontario.
And I think just a little bit more on the goal line, as Councilor Bill was talking. I think it was last year, there was a funding issue. We were able to allocate the funding, but as he elaborated to, the material cost and labor and other issues drove the cost up significantly more than we already had planned because the bids went over expected, right? So if it wasn't for that, the money was there to get it completed to Montclair, but because of the high cost, it's now scheduled to come to Pomona. But hopefully we're not going to give up, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm going to want that, and I think a lot of the community here wants that goal line to get all the way to the airport. That's the ultimate goal. Just think by 2028, we're going to have the Olympics here. We're going to have people flying into Ontario Airport, right? And as it is, traffic gets congested at times, so we need to keep focused and get transportation as a priority here because of the airport and really how it affects the surrounding communities. It's not just Ontario, it's Montclair, it's Chino, it's part of San Bernardino, right? Fontana. All the surrounding cities are going to take a brunt of some of the increased transportation, right? So not only we've got to look at, make sure we get the goal line to the airport, but then also how does the area around the airport able to accommodate all these extra cars coming in because they're going to be coming, right? And it's going to help in many ways with a lot of the communities. And really, why can't we have that type of rail system here in our community? If it's good enough for the other parts of the county, we have a major international airport here. We need the same type of service as well, right? To help our community grow and prosper. So with that, leads me to the end of things I've been working on. And now as we come towards just my brief introduction about things that I'm working on, this comes to the part where I'd like to hear from you folks about any thoughts or issues and concerns. And I'm really good that we have some council members here from the city of Montclair. And I must say, this is probably my 4th or 5th community coffee. And looking around, this is the largest group of folks I've had. So I want to thank you all for coming out today, because every time we only have a few folks, but I think working together with our electeds here, we got a good turnout here in the city of Montclair. And being it's my last meeting of the year for my community coffees, I'll have other things going on in the district.
Sure.
But I want to thank you all for coming out to listening a little about what we're doing. And I'm glad once again we have some local electeds in case there's anything specific to the city of Montclair, because I have some things that we can be available. A lot of issues that come, the local level issues, whether it's that I'm presenting. It's good to have the local electeds here, so that way, if there's anything that comes up specifically about the city of Montclair, they can help us to address some of those issues. So with that, I'll leave it open to them. Go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry, thank you, Freddie Rodriguez, for the opportunity to speak. I've wanted the people and several things I've achieved. We don't have a homeless crisis. We have a housing discrimination, like by single family size and gender. I don't think there should be free housing. Where I come from, everyone has to take care of themselves. For example, my homeless friend was a U.S. veteran, and he had his apartment paid for in San Bernardino City, not this area.
And you're right, you know, there's a lot of issues contributing to the homeless issue, the housing crisis, it's affecting everyone, it's not just here, nationwide. It's everybody is working together and trying to provide the right resources to address that issue. I think there's a couple bills working through the legislature, they're looking to address it. But at the end of the day, I want to know how that affects my community, right? Even though I represent the state of California, I want to see how it affects the city as of Montclair, Pomona, Chino, Ontario, and the parts of Fontana. Because if it's not going to work for my people, then it's kind of hard for me to look at supporting something, right? Because I want to make sure I come back and say, you know what, Freddie, that stuff we did a year or two ago, we're starting to see a change, right? We're starting to see there's more housing available to folks. We're getting folks off the street into these housings and getting them the resources they need. So it's something, obviously, sir, it's many issues that are causing that, but something that's always on everybody's mind. Housing, where we're going, homeless, and all the issues attributed to that. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. Yes, sir.
On Monte Vista, right there by the westbound entrance to the freeway, they repaved it, did a really nice job, but they keep putting a diamond lane or express lane, carpool lane good in, and that little piece of freeway that's only maybe 200 feet or so between the exit from the westbound side to the entrance on the westbound side, and the traffic bottlenecks right there. And when the traffic in the mornings or during the peak traffic, the people can't get into the diamond lane, so they're stuck on the Monte Vista northbound lanes trying to make that left, and they can't get in because
So the way it's striped.
well, it's just that they don't need to have two diamond lanes, because then the left-turn people coming into the freeway could get in either lane. But if you have an option only of one lane, then the traffic gets all backed up in that little short piece. And I've seen many, many accidents right there. And I teach AARP safe driving course right here in Montclair, Laverne, and all the centers. And that's one of the concerns that people are telling me. And the other one is, on the Monte Vista, the traffic moves awfully fast. And I was working with Mike Hudson, the engineer for the city, and then now Noel Castillo. And there's supposed to be no truck traffic coming south of the freeway on Monte Vista. And they're coming down at 45 miles an hour. And I asked to have a sign put right at the center divider, right there where the freeway exits, right just by the overpass there. There's a center divider right there. And there used to be a sign there before they repaved and put those apartments there. But I've asked for a sign with no trucks that way, because there's not supposed to be any trucks coming south of there. But they took the sign away. And I was working with Mike Hudson, and then he retired, and Noel Castillo said, well, there's nothing I can do, that the state controls this, and I get all these state rules. But it's like something as simple as putting a no truck sign and having a speed limit for people down here. So trucks are coming 40 miles an hour. A car 40 miles an hour is dangerous, but a truck 40 miles an hour is super dangerous. And there's schools here, there's preliminary, there's preschools, and there are high schools. And I'm concerned for these kids. And the seniors are telling me that they're afraid to go down Monte Vista when they attend these safety driving courses that I teach.
So you're talking the southbound Monte Vista, just south of the 10 freeway, correct?
Correct. There's
So
no
there
truck-
should be a sign that no trucks shouldn't be on that street.
Right, they're all supposed to turn on Palo Verde.
Okay. Maybe, Bill, or somebody else
Council members here, we can certainly work and find out why. There may be a reason Caltrans has to be involved, but we can find out for you, we can get an answer to you.
And then I asked about speed control, and the truckers getting cited because they're coming too fast, and I was told that there's only one police officer, he's on disability. Take his trucks. There's only one police officer on the trucks.
We'll obviously look at that from our office and the city's
And I
office.
can get,
You get your information before you
have you
leave.
sit with Chief Avels and,
Then on Monte Vista northbound from Hull, there's supposed to be no traffic, no truck coming this way. Well, the sign for no truck is between Benito and San Bernardino. They're already 90% of the way through.
So those signs should go north and south of the.
On Monte
on
Vista.
Monte Vista. Okay.
South on Hull, there should be a sign coming north saying no trucks allowed. And then south of the freeway, no trucks allowed.
Okay.
And it's just that they're coming too fast. That's been my main concern.
work on that.
Okay.
I co-chair the Public Works Committee with Chairman Kraft, and I know for a fact that right now, Noel Castillo, who you've spoken with, he actually is working on a safer routes to school plan. So those students that.
Yeah, a lot of kids walk through that.
Yeah, I know there is from the high
You know
school.
that we are actually actively working on that very issue. So it's
Yeah, I like to see, something as simple as a sign up there. I
Okay,
think that would
sounds
eliminate
simple.
50% at least.
Okay, so Councilman Carter will be addressed. Sir, you have your hand up right here.
Sorry, Mr. Rodriguez, I can take my time. We're registered nurses, also a diabetes educator. I want to thank you on behalf of registered nurses for your work on healthcare, being a healthcare advocate. I want to get your perspective on AB 890. As you well know, it's the limitation on nurse practitioners. There's a great healthcare disparity here in our basin, District 52, as far as diabetes and hypertension and so forth. And I wanted to get your perspective on what you can vote on AB 890 as far as eliminating the restriction, bless you, eliminating restriction on nurse practitioners in our area.
And with that, that's obviously, I'm glad you brought that up. Just to kind of elaborate on the committees I sit on, health is one of them, which that bill will be coming to me in health, and being the chairman of our retirement system of PERS and STRS. Also sit on communications and conveyance, all our internet stuff that we talk about, and I think have a local level of local emergency preparedness and emergency management. Those are the committees I sit on as well. So with that bill has not been assigned to our committee yet. So because of that, I really don't know much about it. So unfortunately, I can't give you my position. I really don't know the position on bills probably till the day I'm going to hear that bill, because sometimes they get introduced and then they start to change before they get to committee, and it'll be an entirely different bill. So with that, feel free to reach out to my office as he gets through the process, and we can keep you posted on that as well. But I really don't much know, like I said, once again, I don't know much about that bill, so it's difficult to give me a position on it, but be rest assured, when we get to that point, I'll let you know on that. Anyone?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. My name is Arthur Shopper. I am the organization director for Mass Resistance. I provided this form. If you did not get a copy, I'll give it to you. These are 4 really alarming bills. The first one is SB 145. This is essentially a pedophile amnesty. If you have a sex offender abuses a minor and there's less than 10 years difference in their ages, he or she does not have to register as a sex offender. This is extremely alarming, and it's not gotten better because there's the gut and amend process right now. I'm urging a no vote. Assembly Bill 175, it's rushing through the Assembly. It's very disturbing because this is a bill that would make it harder for parents to foster children. Foster kids are most at disadvantage, at risk, I feel, among many children in our communities. This is a bill that would require the foster parents to recognize a 3rd, 4th, or 20th gender. This is dysphoria, and it shouldn't be enabled. We need foster parents to be able to do the best they can without dismissing biology. This bill needs to be stopped. It's going way too fast. Are you on the Appropriations Committee by chance? Okay, please speak to your colleagues to vote against this. Democrats have rejected it, by the way, so you wouldn't be alone. Assembly Bill 493. I'm really getting frustrated with, I see our schools turning like, they're pushing this LGBT agenda. They're pushing transsexualism, homosexuality. These are destructive behaviors, and it's being treated as a civil right. Kids are not even learning reading, writing, and arithmetic. Parents have talked to me all over the state on these matters, and Assemblyman Gloria's bill would take even more training time away from teachers to just teach the basic skills that our kids need to take those jobs you were talking about, like for the Gold Line. Last of all, there's Assembly Bill 650. We have a lot of crime problems in the state of California, and I recognize our law enforcement is doing everything they can. This bill, it just adds another layer of bureaucracy, and it's discriminatory. I think we should care about victims regardless of who they're sleeping with all due respect. We need to just toughen up our law enforcement. Again, I urge every one of you, please speak to the Assemblyman and your state senator on these bills. We've got to stop them. It's just uncanny. There was a bill last year, AB 2943. It was horrific. It would have basically banned the Bible. It would have banned communications on natural marriage, life, and family. You voted for that, and that kind of thing can't happen again. We've got to protect natural marriage, life, family, and our children. I have updated it because I had given you 5. One bill has been amended so that it's no longer noxious. But I'm urging every one of you, please, not just with this Assemblyman, but with everyone you can. We've got to stop these. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you once again. Like I said, those bills are working through the process. Obviously, he just addressed one of the issues that one of the bills got amended, so it isn't as bad as it was intended from the beginning. So that's what you're going to see right now. A lot of bills have been introduced. I think maybe 2,000 bills, I'm hearing something like that, have been introduced from both the Assembly and the Senate side. Or, I'm sorry, 5,000 bills. Okay, that shows you how much I'm missing. Because there's 2 houses, right?
That's unreal.
The Assembly House and the Senate House, both are passing bills. I'm pretty much just concentrating on my bills and the bills we start to hear. So with that, a lot of changes can happen to these bills, and even when they get to committee, they can change in committee before they come back to us. So right now is the time when we're dissecting these bills, so to speak, to see what are the real intentions of the bills and how we can make them better. Obviously, we don't want to make them any worse. Yes, sir, you have it.
Basically, what he was just saying right now, I saw the curriculum, but the first sheet. I'm sorry, miss. Fourth graders. Okay? And parents are not going to be notified. The curriculum is very, very.
And one for the lady behind you.
And that was Bill, just wanted to write a note down on that we talked about regarding the curriculum coming for the fourth graders. What bill was that? Is that the one that he was talking
Yeah,
about?
that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, 493.
It was 490. Okay, I just wanted to know. Okay, so
I'll give you, I'm sorry to bring it up.
Oh, we could share.
Okay.
Thank you. We can share too.
Yeah, this is horrific what they're doing. It's a pedophile amnesty. I'm not kidding you. It is horrific. There's no fixing it.
Our church made a big movement on this against it, because it's put off the school. So our church is fighting it really, really bad, and we're being attacked. We're sending somebody out to the community. We're being attacked now for trying to stop all this. So.
Okay, you got one.
Our church gets big on our fight.
any other questions from folks? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Shirley Walker. I'm a public retiree, and so of course retiree issues are always what's on my mind. And you're on the retirement committee of the state, so I have a couple things. I know you tried on the joint powers thing, the San Diego joint powers, and they took the retroactivity out of it. So this is my question: I know those people haven't been helped except pennies. Are they going to be forgotten, or are we going to continue trying to get the 4 cities involved to take care of those retirees?
Yes, and with that bill, we weren't able to get that. It's just going to be a process how people interpret the bill. But my whole thing is we can't let that happen again, right? That was a bad issue with those joint powers.
I know we can't let it happen again, and they made it so it can't happen again. But what about these poor people that lost all their pensions?
And
Holy
that's something that we'll have to address
Forget them?
with the cities, right? Because the cities
Yeah.
came together to form that joint powers agreement. So really, the issue lies with them to take responsibility, not the state. Our point is to make sure that those cities are held accountable, responsible for those retirees, right? They're the ones that formed that organization, so they should be the ones. And I think there's some litigation going on that issue as well.
Yes. Thank you. I have one other.
Oh, no. So let's just get this one real quick. I know my chief wanted to elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the assembly member in the last legislation, we weren't able to make it retroactive, but the reason being is because there's active litigation. When there's active litigation, legislature doesn't like to pass bills that impede that because it may change things. So we're waiting to see what happens with litigation, so that way we can probably do something with it.
And you have one more question?
Okay, you mentioned the state has this $18 million surplus.
Yes.
It's not gonna last very long if something isn't done about the vacation cap with state employees. It's not being enforced. Is there anything you can do about that? Because 2 retiring state employees cashed in for $400,000+ each because the cap is not being enforced. And if that goes on, you're not gonna have a surplus very long.
So we're talking about vacation cash outs for pensions. Huge money getting taken out of
So
cities.
that is on some of our minds to see how we can fix that, because you're right. If they're exceeding the cap, then there's problems.
Yeah.
There's a cap. I'm a city of Montclair retiree. I had a cap, and it was enforced. And that is the thing. They've got to enforce it.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
So that is an issue that's come to the committee recently, and the committee's looking at the implications for the state. Part of the problem is that there are individual bargaining units. So it's not like there's just one bargaining unit or union that has a contract that says this is what our cap will be. So we have to address the caps individually per bargaining unit. So it's going to take a second for the oversight to be able to do that properly.
And I think that's a little bit difficult for the regular folks to understand because of the different type of bargaining groups and how they're applied to that section of appointment. So gets a little tricky. So how we do it, it's not something we can do overnight because of those different type of groups. So thank you. Yes, sir.
It's been a couple weeks back, I called your office. We had been notified by one of our financial institutions I don't think it was a bank, but it was along that line, that we had to have some activity on this particular account at least once a year for it not to be taken over by the state. Now, I learned a little bit about the legal end of this. I'm not a lawyer, I have no legal background, but something came up in the back of my mind that I'd run across this before. The legal term is escheat. And what that simply means, it's from English feudal law. I mean, that goes back centuries upon centuries. That if the person who worked the lord's estate didn't do what they were supposed to do, the property went back to the lord of the estate. Well, that's apparently what happens here in California. Even though we're a community property state, there's still vestiges of the old English law going on. That if you don't show some activity on your financial accounts after, I don't know, so many days or let's say years, the state has a right to take it over. However, they do have a list of these type of properties that you can look up on the internet to see if your name is, you have to look up, I'll get this right, you have to look it up by your social security number. If nothing comes up, good. Something comes up, you better take some action on it because technically it'll become the property of the state of California. So I found this out by myself. You can put your, I'm sorry, I'm searching for a term here. You can put your staff at rest on that. But this is a heads up for anybody that has an old financial account. You've not done anything with it for years. It could be an IRA, it could be a bank account, it could be a tax refund. It'll wind up as being owned by the property of the state of California if you don't take some action to claim it.
Well, thanks for bringing our attention to something I can look at as well. You know, obviously, that's the purpose of having these meetings to hear issues like that, to see how we can address them, hopefully get you an answer, and then hopefully we can work on it if that's an issue with a lot of other folks as well. Yes?
Okay. So what he's talking about is a program through the Secretary of State, State Controller's Office.
Okay.
So if you want to look for your property and have any reclaimed property by the state, it's the State Controller's Office that you can go on and type in your information.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Assemblyman, thank you. I'm Dr. Lally. I own 50/50 up the street, and it was a family practice clinic that I took over and rebuilt. Assemblyman Rodriguez and Mr. Lawrence have been very instrumental in helping us because there's a snafu at the state level. We're on the cusp of being approved as a federally qualified health center, which means we'll be able to see everybody and anybody at any given time, and we're very excited about that. There's someone who's taken a personal interest in this, and I need to share that with you because I've had the clinic since '88, running the city through the graciousness of the council and Mr. Starr, and I moved everything over here so we could see more people that aren't able to get health care. So, one, he is working at least on pushing for help, so I appreciate that. And the other thing is I want to thank the community for allowing us to continue. I really didn't have anybody complain when I tore down the old building and put up the new one, so you're welcome to come by and look anytime you want. Our goal is to provide care. Okay. We're the only center on the west side of San Bernardino that has an urgent care for psych, and we're able to see those patients that need and can't get in to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Every morning we have 3 to 4 waiting, and we're still managing to see them as well as provide health care. So we're trying to take a little burden off the emergency room and give people care, because mental illness, as we know, or mental health, as we know.
I don't like that word illness.
So I changed it to health. I apologize. So it is something that we are dealing with, and at least we're actively involved in trying to help it. So thank you.
And I just want to feedback Dr. Lyman, thanks for coming here. And I actually toured this facility almost a year ago. Very state of the art, very beautiful looking. Doctor, what's the address there real quick?
50/50 San Bernardino.
5050 San Bernardino Avenue. Very beautiful place, and it's good to have a relationships with folks like him to provide services, especially when it comes to healthcare. Obviously, it's huge throughout the state. The more we can give our communities, the better to have access to healthcare facilities.
Right.
Not just hospitals, emergency rooms, but what he's doing there is great. And being the fact that he's doing psych treatment and care, that's fabulous, because that's a big issue. I think mental health is huge and a lot of issues we're facing in the state of California. So once again, thank you for having your services here in the community. Any other questions? So with that, I know if nobody has any questions, maybe I can just have somebody from the city of Montclair talk about a couple of things they're doing. If that's something somebody from the city of Montclair would like to talk about. I know sometimes we're probably thinking, what's Montclair doing about this or that, but maybe, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I think since it looks like I may be done on my part, maybe the city can talk about a couple of things that they're working on and share with you what's happening right here in our backyard.